When it comes to reporting in Acumatica using the out-of-the-box reporting tools, you have 4 options. The first option is Report Designer. A Report Designer is best used for reports that are going to be printed to paper. So let's say we're on this invoices screen in Acumatica and we want to print this invoice. What comes up is a report that was designed using Report Designer. You can see this particular report is portrait, but it might have been landscape. It could be designed for printing to letter size or legal size. Bottom line, it's designed to be printed to a piece of paper. Now this works great for things like invoices, like we're looking at here, or purchase orders, sales orders. Where I don't think it works that well is something like this. You'll see in the receivables area, there's a number of profitability reports that are slicing and dicing by different things, salesperson and customer, item and order, etc. If we run one of these reports, come back here to the first page, you'll see there's salesperson, in this case no salesperson. By customer, you can page through, go to the last page, here I can see a total for J. Parker, then individual customer totals underneath J. Parker. I would call this type of reporting analysis. Now we can do it in Report Designer, but I don't think that's the best tool for the job. For analyzing your data, that's where I like using the second option, generic inquiries and pivot tables. Now I put these together because pivot tables live right inside of generic inquiries. Let's look at an example. Up here I've got invoiced items. This is a generic inquiry. It's very simple, it's just rows and columns of information. Now I can pull that information from anywhere in Acumatica, just like I can with Report Designer, but this isn't designed to be printed to a piece of paper. Because of that, I'm not limited by the size of the paper. I can add as many columns as I want. You'll see I just keep scrolling as far as I want to get as many columns as I want into this generic inquiry. I really like that, because it then gives the user the flexibility to use this column configuration icon and select which columns they want to see. They can move columns just by double clicking them from the right to the left. These columns will be hidden. They'll only see the columns on the right hand side. If they click OK, it remembers which columns they want to see, so next time they come here, they only see the columns they care about. And each user can pick different sets of columns that they care about, but you can design one big giant generic inquiry that has everything that someone would want to see. It's also more interactive than Report Designer in the sense I can click on any column heading, I can apply a sort to it, or I can filter on it. So I can apply on-the-fly sorting and filtering to find the information that I'm looking for. Much more interactive than Report Designer. So generic inquiries are a great way to quickly get the data. If I were to do this same thing in Report Designer, I'll come back here and open this up. If I try to edit this in Report Designer, you're going to find out pretty quickly here that this is kind of a scary tool. I would call it a borderline developer tool. And in my experience, I probably spend 80% of my time on formatting, getting things to fit on the page, moving things around, grouping. You'll see here's the salesperson group, the customer group. You can do it and it's very powerful, but it's also a lot of work. When it comes to a generic inquiry, it's much faster to create, significantly faster. You just add your tables here. You then go to the results grid and add the columns that you care about. The only tricky part is doing the relations, but you have to do that in Report Designer anyways. So it's much faster creating these generic inquiries. And in my experience, a lot of times when someone's asking for a quote report, they're really just asking for a way to dump it to Excel. And you can do that with the generic inquiry. Now, not only can I dump it to Excel, but I can do a pivot table without leaving Acumatica. You see I've got 1,600 records. I could page through all 229 pages to see those individual records, but I want to summarize this information. That's where a pivot table is really useful. To do that, you just go up here to Save as Pivot. We give it a name. I'll call this by salesperson and customer. Let's share this with everyone. Click OK. And if you ever use pivot tables in Excel, this is not as sophisticated as Excel, but you can do the basics. Let's drag salesperson name on here, customer name. Let's total up net sales. And then let's make some modifications to the properties. I like this to be collapsed by default. Let's make this a little wider. And let's make customer name a little wider as well. So you can see that in less than 60 seconds, click the gear icon, I've now got a nice summarized by salesperson. If I expand this out, by customer as well. So I can see the breakdown by salesperson, by customer. I basically did the same thing. Here's the 2377121. I go back to the report and look at that same J. Parker salesperson, 2377121. So I did the same thing. I just did it a lot faster and without having to open that borderline developer tool called Report Designer. And I really like that because not only is it faster to create initially, it's faster to change your mind. If I go in here and maybe I don't want to summarize it by salesperson, I could drag salesperson off and I could drag maybe item class on. Very quick to change your mind in terms of how you're slicing and dicing. If I were doing that in Report Designer, I have to go build an entirely new report. It's significantly longer to change the way I'm slicing and dicing the data. A pivot table, in my opinion, on top of a generic inquiry like we just did, is a much better way to analyze your data using an out-of-the-box Acumatica reporting tool. Our third option is dashboards. Now, similar to pivot tables, dashboards also sit on top of generic inquiries. So you design the generic inquiry to get the data, and then you use the dashboard to make it look nice. Let's take a look at a dashboard. So we've got this sales manager dashboard, and each one of these individual things is called a widget. This 93 wins is a widget, 78 losses is a widget, my team sales bookings, this whole thing here, this chart is a widget, and I can scroll down and add as many widgets as I want to this dashboard. I'll go ahead and do that. Design, add new widget, and let's add the pivot table that we just created. So click next, go in here, look for the invoiced items, and we'll select the pivot table that we created. And we'll call it sales by salesperson and customer. I can resize it. Oh, it looks like I picked the wrong one. Let's go back in here. And I actually want this one. Let's go back in here. We'll expand this out. Maybe make it taller. Design, I'll refresh that. And now I've got that same pivot table, but I've got it on a dashboard. Click that, you can still drill down and see the individual customers broken out under the salesperson. I really like dashboards because each one of these widgets can be a completely different thing. I don't have to just summarize the same base set of information. These can be completely different, grabbing data from completely different areas of Acumatica. Now, if you're a numbers person like me, I'm a recovering CPA, accountant, numbers are fine. Numbers communicate to me. But most people are not numbers people. Most people are visual. So if I wanted to show this same salesperson information in a more visual way, I could do that using a chart. So let's do that. We'll add a new widget. We'll add a chart. We'll use the same generic inquiry that we use. And I'll go in here to configure and I'll use a bar chart. Let's summarize this by the salesperson name, which I have down here. And I'm going to do something a little interesting here, at least I think it's interesting. We're only going to show the top 5 salespeople. And then for anyone outside the top 5, we'll total their sales into 1/6 entry by checking this box here. Then we'll go down here, we'll total up net sales, and we can even format it. Let's not show the pennies, we'll just show the dollars. Click OK. Let's give it a caption. This will just be sales by salesperson. Click finish there. And now I've got a nice looking chart that's giving me a total by salesperson. And you'll see what's happening here. Empty is actually considered a salesperson because it's just sales with no salesperson. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's giving me my top 5 salespeople. And then it's showing me that actually if I total up everyone else, they actually land in the 4th slot. So I like this bar chart because it gives me a way to easily tell, quickly communicate visually how much more Steve Church has compared to the Kachin down here. I like this because you can easily tell relatively how much more the sales are. And then same looking up here. This is not quite as big of a difference as it is with Steve and Kachin. So it's great to use dashboards because you can communicate visually, and I think most people are visual, so it's important to be able to communicate information visually. The last option we have for out-of-the-box report writers is the ARM Financial Report Writer. Now this is the tool for accountants, primarily used for designing income statements, balance sheets, financial reporting of that nature. We can see an example of that with this profit and loss report. So in here in the finance area, you'll see there's some financial statements, balance sheet, profit and loss, cash flow. I can run the profit and loss, run report, and I've got my rows down the side. I've got my year-to-date numbers, my period-to-date numbers. I can scroll down here and I can even drill down on these numbers. So maybe I'm curious to see why in July of 2021, I've got $104,000 in advertising. I can click that. It opens a new tab on the top. I can then drill down further into an individual GL account. And then I can drill down to a specific entry, attending Acumatica Summit 2021. I'm wondering why it cost $4,000. I can drill down further. You see each time it's opening a new tab. I've now drilled down into the AP bill, including the ability to drill down into the file attachment and see what I spent that $4,130 on. So that's the Financial Report Writer. It's designed for financial statements. It gives me the ability to drill down. And if we come back here and if we look at how this report gets set up, we can edit it. If you've ever used a tool like FRX, this tool is set up for you to design rows and columns. You can also optionally have unit sets on them. If I look in the rows, for example, I'm defining row by row where I'm pulling the data from. Now this is a GL report, but I have two options. I can either pull the data from the general ledger module or the project ledger module. Those are my two options. You can't pull data from everywhere in Acumatica, just the GL, the general ledger, and the project ledger. But it's row by row. I define it all here, and then I can run that report. Now I think what's interesting with the ARM Financial Report Writer is many times I'll see people do all the work to set it up using those row sets and column sets, but then in practice what they actually do with it is they run it and they just export it to Excel. And in my experience, whenever you're doing reporting on any ERP system, Excel always gets involved. Whether it's exporting a financial statement or whether it's exporting a generic inquiry, Excel is always involved. And as soon as you export data to Excel, it's important to realize that you just used a third-party reporting tool. And there are definitely valid reasons why you do that. So coming back to our 4 out-of-the-box reporting tools, let's now look at it this way. These are the 4 options we have inside of Acumatica. But on the webinar today, we've got 2 additional third-party options to consider. Now I'm drawing lines around these, which Johnny and Gabrielle might not like, but I'm just trying to summarize things. I think they can make cases for how they can cross these lines and do more than the box I'm putting them in. But I think for the most part, you're going to see that DataSelf is a solution that does more than you can do with generic inquiries, pivot tables, and dashboards. And Velixo is a solution that does more than you can do with the ARM Financial Report Writer.